from Kaduna to Benin and to so many other communities, looking at the menace caused by flood. Joining us this morning to talk more on this alert is Desmond Majakodumui. He is an environmentalist. Good morning and thanks for joining us. What would you be saying to us at this moment? We understand that we should expect more of what we have seen in Kaduna and Benin.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, to be honest, the saddest part of it is that we're reading that some of the victims are having to be evacuated by canoe. Now, in another part of the world, just a couple of weeks ago, they had massive floods, and the victims were being evacuated by helicopter. And, you know, this country that was using helicopters is no more advanced than Nigeria should be. We are the giant of Africa. So why are our flood victims having to pay premium price to be rescued by canoe when in other countries that should not be more advanced than we are using helicopters to evacuate their victims? It's a terrible indictment on where we are now, and one could just say, you know, cry the beloved country. But as you said, we should expect more floods.
Why is that so?
Well, it's because there's more rain. It's a symptom of climate change that we've been warned about for many years now. And, you know, basically what happens is because there's more energy in terms of heat energy over the oceans, you have more evaporation of water. And as a result of that, you have more rain. And what's happening is that the rain falls rather quickly. That is, you get a lot of rain falling in a short space of time. So it inundates the river systems. And, you know, further upstream, you have countries that their dams now need to be opened, and that puts even more water into the river systems. You know, but having said that, rivers will always flood anyway. And unfortunately, for many, many years, we've allowed people to develop on the flood plains without, you know, taking into cognizance the fact that these places are called flood plains because these are the plains where floods will come. So there's a fundamental, foundational problem that needs to be resolved, and it can't be resolved in this ad hoc manner where at the end of the day, it's a big emergency and they're trying to evacuate the people, and then the poor people have to hire canoes to get evacuated.
You know, for instance, some of those communities, they all have rivers that we thought would have been able to help. For instance, there's the Ikoba River in Benin City. There's also a couple of other places where we expect to see that they take the excess of this flood. You have always done a couple of write-ups concerning our shorelines and our oceans. Do you think we've been able to, well, harness some of the potential inherent in some of these waters around us to take, well, some of the excess water?
Yeah, it's an indication of the accumulation of wrongs that have unfortunately besetted our dear nation over the years through totally irresponsible leadership. And, you know, we're talking of decades of irresponsible leadership, which, you know, would have started when the bullet took over from the ballot. You know, and when the bullet is the deciding factor and not the ballot, which represents the people's voice, obviously, even if you do have a few good individuals in the system, you're not going to have much representation. You're not going to have many good things happening for the people. It's an indication of that. So, you know, like places were built where they shouldn't have been built. The drainages that should have been developed were not developed. When warnings were given that floods would come, people didn't take cognizance of it. So it's just an accumulation of the ills that, you know, have besetted our dear nation for many, many years when, you know, democracy was truncated and the people didn't have a voice. Now that the people have a voice, we expect that the leadership will truly be representing the people and doing what is in the job description because they are civil servants. So hopefully they will follow the job description and actually start serving the people. And in the process of that, yes, you start developing big plans for water evacuation, and you start developing massive drainage systems, because as we said, these floods will come. They might not be next year, but the year after, definitely the floods will come, because climate change is a very, very harsh reality. It's an inconvenient truth, but it's a harsh reality. Climate change will bring a lot more rain. So we need to start preparing for it and start serving our people in the right sort of way.
Desmond, beyond the warnings that have been given out, now some people say yes, early warnings were given out about late rains and early end of rains, but beyond the warnings, and as you said, we need to start preparing for these floods that more of them will be coming in. What exactly should we be doing? I mean, should government be doing beyond building of the drains and all of that? What else should they be doing?
Well, several things. The first thing is just to look at the immediate remediation. We're coming into the dry season now. As soon as that starts, there has to be a very concerted reallocation program. Relocation. People need to be moved away from the flood plains. Rivers and streams will flood, and that needs to be taken very, very seriously. Then there's other things. There can be dredging of the river themselves, and also, forest protection in the uplands, because another thing that exacerbates the flooding is when you have siltation. And you have siltation in the rivers because forests in the uplands where the waters come from have been removed. So you get erosion, so you get a lot of sand coming in, and it raises the riverbed, makes it more prone to flooding. So that's the immediate remedial measure. But the next measure is to appreciate that, prevention is better than cure. And if we're just going to sit on the sidelines and say, climate change, terrible thing, and just allow it to continue, then we will need to do a lot more curative measures. So Nigeria, our great nation, which is the giant of Africa, which should have the same sort of technologies as Japan, which is the country we're talking about earlier. Japan put helicopters in, pulled her people out. Nigeria is the giant of Africa. Okay, so we need to now speak with a powerful voice, leading Africa, or at least leading the West African nations with a powerful voice, and speaking to the West and saying, okay, you are the ones that caused this global warming through your industrialization, through your irresponsible industrialization practices. You are the ones who caused it. You people must now stop this. Meanwhile, we in West Africa are ready to start protecting our forest belts. And why am I saying this? Because the cause of the global warming, the major cause, is carbonization of the atmosphere. Too much CO2 pollution. And guess what? The forests and the green belts can sequester the carbon. So we in Nigeria need to lead the rest of Africa in a massive move of reforestation and seriously protecting our forest belts as carbon sinks. And we can offer this to the world and say, okay, this is what we are bringing to the table. We can help to remove this problem that you have caused. Nigeria is the giant of Africa, and we must walk and talk like a true giant.
You've given a plethora of solutions. Most of them are long-term. And to think that it's not every year that we experience these floods is, sometimes government has the best of intentions, but if it's not topping its priority for that year, it might not get any attention. So what would you have advised? Because we did know that the Lagdo Dam was going to be released from Cameroon, which is not something within our territory. We do know that rains are going to be quite heavy this year, according to NIMET predictions. What should we have done to prevent the humanitarian disaster that we're facing currently?
Well, what we should have done is just insist on, government that is accountable. We should insist on people who are calling themselves civil servants to truly be serving the civil society, to protect our people, to disallow the type of rampant nonsense. How can you give planning permits? How can you allow people to be building on flood plains when the very description is a plain that floods will come? This is so irresponsible, and we need to take a stand against this. Because this type of irresponsibility now will not just lead to dislocation of people, it will not just lead to impoverishing our people, it will lead to inundation of people's life sources, and worse still, it will lead to death. Already in the Kaduna area, several people have died. We're just lucky that the floods were not worse, and believe you me, they could become a lot worse. You know, government itself needs to sit up and do the job properly, serve the people far, far more effectively. It's not rocket science. We know what can be done to protect ourselves from floods. We know what can be done, but they're not doing it. And the people now need to insist that, hey, you guys are in power.
It's really important that they listen to what you have said this morning. We do hope that the governments across the country, local, state, and even the federal, will do something pretty fast, as you have warned. We'd like to thank you so much, Desmond Majekodunmi, an environmentalist, for taking your time to speak with us this morning on Sunrise Daily.